So I was saying that this decision of the International Court of Justice really plays into question how much can now the Western governments support Israel or not. And they also have to make a decision, because if they are going 100% for Israel, they really have to go 100% with Israel. And that means a lot of money as well. And I find that now everybody is still in shock that the International Court of Justice recognize there are intense genocidal intents in the elites of Israel. And they didn't make the big decision of decreting a ceasefire. They did not. But the decision was quite unanimous, strangely enough. It was always 15 against 2 judges, who is quite good for what happened. And for so much, how can I say, for so much political engagement. But everybody was really afraid of being connected with genocide. And the US will have to make that decision as well. Until now, we have seen countries like US, Canada, and Britain saying, no, this is not true. Israel has the right to defend itself. But I find it difficult politically to keep sustaining that point. So we could see that the US is going to leave Ukraine and Israel, and perhaps Ukraine as well. But if they go and decide to support Israel more, then we definitely will have a problem. But this will cost a lot to US and other European countries if they keep supporting Israel after these, especially in 1 month, because some people didn't really listen to, especially the newspapers, didn't listen to something very important. Israel has a month to write down a report that they change their policies and make those recommendations change, especially to prosecute people that have been having this type of genocidal discourses. And as I said, so we'll have a month of nobody really knows what to do. And if Israel doesn't present that report, the court could come back and give even more measures against it. So I think it's also interesting. Everybody doesn't know what to do. And I think it also explains a bit why the world has become so little bit chaotic. So many things happening all the time. Yeah. So what do you guys think about this?
I think it's not going to change anything for Gaza. Very sadly, Israel is going to continue to bomb it, even if most of the other nation or other country publicly condemn Israel. They are just going to continue to bomb everything.
And so,
because they don't care.
Will they keep getting support from outside?
From USA. The true question is USA going to continue? The other country doesn't matter. It's very sad, but it's the truth.
That will have a political price, a very big one to pay.
I think but they're ready to pay it.
Sorry, Shadowing. I think they will give both the Ukrainians and the Israelis money, because it's like one said, it's an election year. You can't afford to just let the Ukrainians like die slowly. All of a sudden, you have like Kharkiv gets attacked, or Avdiivka gets taken. They're near Zaporizhia, and he comes to an election year in September, October. It would be catastrophic for him. He already lost and withdraw horribly from Afghanistan. Now it will be this one. Then he will tell the Jews, oh no, you cannot bomb them, or the opposite. Anyways, both sides will be mad at you. The only thing he can do actually would be to accept the package the Republicans give him, where he gives money to the border. It will solve one problem. Second problem, he will get some money for Ukraine. Third, some money for Israel, and even money for Taiwan. But he don't want to do it because ideologically he thinks that
they need to give money to Taiwan.
Wait, let me just finish real quick. That the people who enter illegally will vote later on Democrats, what also can backfire if you don't do it right. But like I said, I don't think that Biden will allow just countries who is supported just to go under, because he has an election year. He want to get 4 more years, and that's obvious.
For more years. For more
If
years.
I can talk about the ICJ briefly. So I read that judgment. It's the thing about the judgment is it doesn't come out and make a bold statement against Israel's actions. So that disappointed a lot of people. But at the same time, it didn't excuse Israel either. It kind of took a non-confrontational approach. And it's actually worth reading the two judgments that went against the majority. They're kind of interesting. One of them by the African lady is that's just straight up Nikki Haley stuff, like Israel can do no wrong. Oh, it's terrible that you're talking about Israel. But actually there was an ad hoc judge from Israel. Ad hoc means that he's not actually on the court permanently, but he was invited on so that Israel had someone there to speak for them. And this guy was, his name is Barak, and he's interesting. He's no lightweight. He was actually the head of the Supreme Court of Israel. So Israel didn't send some young, brash lawyer. They sent a heavyweight. And his comments were really interesting. It's actually worth reading his judgment and what he says, because he represents the legal community inside Israel. And Netanyahu is in trouble with the legal community inside Israel. Netanyahu is actually on trial, and one of the reasons Netanyahu started this war was to escape his legal jeopardy. And so the Israeli judge, Barak, he made some interesting points that are worth considering, such as, there has to be proportionality. So if the court is going to talk about Israeli excesses in war, then they should also talk about Hamas's behavior. And that's a fair point, right? And the court acknowledged that as well. But one of the other things that he said that I thought was really interesting was he said that Israel has a tradition of the rule of law and they have a legal system, and that they are party to this convention and that they have legal mechanisms for enforcing it inside Israel. Now, think about that. He didn't say all our guys are innocent and Netanyahu is innocent and how dare you accuse him. He actually almost said, we'll deal with this, right?
Yes, quite true.
And given the context of the legal jeopardy that Netanyahu is in, that's interesting. It's also true. Israel does have a legal system that likes to praise itself as adhering to the rule of law. If I was to go to court for anything at all in the Middle East, I'd hope it would be in Israel, right? Not to say they're perfect, but they do have a moderately uncorrupted legal system. So I thought that was very interesting from Barak, because I think that what might have happened in the background of that case is that Barak may have gone there and explained to the other judges that, yeah, there are excesses going on, but we're going to clean it up. And so I'm interested to see what happens in Israel, because there's a huge number of people in Israel who are really, really unhappy with Netanyahu, and they were unhappy with him before this nonsense started. And there's no shortage of people in Israel who would like to see Netanyahu prosecuted. And so I think that we are going to actually see a stepping back from the genocidal and the really sort of war lust that we've seen from, and let's be frank, right? It's not everybody in Israel that's been going on like that. So I actually think that Barak's judgment was interesting and worth reading. And I do think that there is a recognition even from Israel that a lot of what was done was too far. And so I think that we are going to see a de-escalation, which is, that's good news.
Well, it is, but they have a month. They have a month to start showing results. So it's like Israel.
Prader, don't overestimate what the ICJ is and what it can do. It's not a real court. You can't actually do anything. You know what I mean? It's just a bunch of people chatting. But that's not to say it's entirely bad and the chatter is bad. But if Israel wants to nuke Gaza, they can, and there's not really anything anyone can do about it.
Of course they can. Right? That's not the point.
Isn't that nuking themselves?
The point is you have your reputation to keep on with, and
right.
if you Yeah, and especially if we are talking about, and let's also not forget, this reading was made on the Remembrance Day of the genocide, of the Holocaust. So it was not like chosen by chance. And like you said, I think there was a lot of consideration from many of the judges. If we read also, besides the woman from Uganda, which is also a very strange situation, but doesn't matter. If you read Barak, the German judge as well, you see, the point is there is something that Israel can't deny. There is this plausible and dangerous of genocide, of destruction of life that can happen in Israel. And that's retaken out of, because many official people, the woman, the president of the International Court of Justice even said, even cited the president of Israel for doing such comments. So it was too obvious. And now Israel has to act for its own protection in terms of showing that they really are a democracy to all European countries. They're showing they really have a good separation of powers within the.
I have a question, Prata.
And in that sense, if they really don't start showing prosecution of people that abused from their position of power with those types of, they will have a problem of perception. And in 1 month, really, Israel will have to present a report. Yes, they might not. And it's their problem. If they don't present it, the International Court of Justice will not be able to do it. Just like Toby said, like we all know, this is a legal binding court, but it has no possibility of imposing things. The difference, though, with the Genocide Convention, it says all other parties of the Genocide Convention, once they are convinced there is something going on, they have to act. And this is a bit different from other legal texts in that sense. So actually, we could see that the court actually doesn't really. They give Israel a month to present a report that they have changed certain aspects of it. So if they don't do it in 1 month, countries can start acting by themselves, independently. And this is the only thing. I think it's almost the only single document that permits this. And then Israel will be actually facing not justice from the International Court of Justice. They will be facing other countries acting in their own name in what they perceive as being really bad or not so bad. Sorry for saying that.
I think Israel. We're assuming that Israel, the sole and only reason Israel is not even more genocidal right now is because of, number one, how it would look for the US. Israel does not care about what you think about it. It doesn't care. The only reason it is not even more genocidal is because of how the US would be. Like, everybody would be all up in US's case. It's like this. It's like the father. The father right now is the US. So Israel actually just care about what people might say about the father. So the US is the only thing keeping that country from being even more genocidal to these people. There's no such thing. And what do you mean a relatively uncorrupted system? That the Israeli system is fucked up. If it was not corrupted, this war would never have happened. That's a very fucked up political system that's allowed.
It's a very good.
Who gives a shit if it's corrupted?
I mean, who gives a shit if it's corrupted? I mean, all judicial systems are corrupted. Okay. You know, the thing is, the United States and Israel don't care what the rest of the world thinks right now. So it doesn't really matter what the ICJ is. And then, yeah, maybe they'll care about other people's opinions. But, I mean, honestly, Israel acts like it's the United States and it can do what it wants. And the United States is more than happy to back it up and let it do it. And obviously they can hold them back and restrain them. But it doesn't matter what people say because they do what they want because they have the United States to hide behind. And the United States is protected. So, I mean, in that sense, you know, it's great the ICJ brought it up and everyone's talking about it, but in the end, you know, Israel doesn't give a shit what you think or I think or anybody else thinks. They'll do what they want, and hopefully what.
Yeah, but the thing is that other countries can start doing things, and Israel will find itself fully isolated in the world.
Yeah, but I mean, we said that a long time ago. I mean, with this administration in the United States, it's a free-for-all. Everyone's doing what they want. I mean, the ICJ and Israel doing this doesn't mean anything. I mean, everybody's making moves right now. Look at Yemen. Look at Azerbaijan, Iraq. Iran, Syria. China, everyone's making moves. Nobody gives a shit.
Okay, imagine another
expecting the
situation.
US,
Someone wants
expecting
to.
the US, sorry, expecting Israel to care about the ICJ is like asking ISIS to care about the ICJ. Like Israel doesn't give a fuck. Like it doesn't care.
I mean, look at Africa. Everybody's making moves in Africa too. I mean, everybody knows the game's on, so let's go. I mean, that's what they're doing. It doesn't matter what happened with Israel. That's just one more thing happening, and other stuff happening. I mean, it's game on right now with the weak West. Everybody that wants to settle a score, or make a move, is doing it.
And guys, imagine another situation, because the threat was launched by a South African minister. He is not a very important minister; he's the Minister of Economy, so it doesn't really care for this type of matters. But he said something very interesting, that South Africa was preparing a motion, also a complaint against the US to be and United Kingdom to be delivered to the International Court of Justice for the US to be colluding to do genocide with South Africa. Imagine that this goes as long as the US doesn't care about that plausible sense. But I believe, like Toby was saying, I think the Israel legal system will try to clean itself, not entirely, but in a way that we'll see it visible. But nevertheless, what you guys are saying is okay, the US and some Western countries will keep aiding Israel in the so-called defense, which already went over the proportional measure. Then they might be accused in the International Court of Justice. Look at the US being accused of concluding with genocide. It's a destruction of image, like they could have never wished for, and then they will.
The US is not party to the ICJ. It never signed it.
No,
the US is
of course it is. Of course it is. Come on.
Also,
the president is an American. Of course it is. The president is American.
Brother, we have to distinguish also between genocide and crimes against humanity, right? Because and this was covered in the judgment. One of the things that the Israelis took issue with is that they've been accused of genocide. Genocide is the deliberate destruction of an ethnic group or race. And what the Israeli case is they just want to ethnically cleanse Gaza, right? And like, as distasteful as it is, ethnic cleansing is not genocide.
No.
And
genocide is also deportation of people. It's also,
if I can finish,
no,
it's not.
Let him finish.
Ethnic cleansing and genocide are different. They're both crimes against humanity, right? It's not, but genocide is very specific, and Israel is very touchy about this because they were actually the subject of an actual genocide, right? And so it's a bit distasteful reading the Israeli position, but their position is we just want to clean Gaza out. Now it's interesting because that's also a crime against humanity. But my point here is that South Africa may have harmed their case because they've overstated it. You see, if South Africa had put in a claim that said Israel is committing crimes against humanity and is using disproportionate force in order to ethnically cleanse Palestine, right, of everybody, right, so that they can make it Israel, that would have been a much stronger case to make. But instead, because they want the headlines and they want the sensationalism, they called it genocide. And the thing is, my point here is that Israel will get off on a technicality, right? Because they can say, in order to, it's a bit like, yes, I killed them, but it was manslaughter, not murder, right? That Israel will be able to defend the charge of genocide by admitting to ethnic cleansing. So what happens in terms of ethnic cleansing and the rest of it, like Wyatt might be able to talk about this. Wyatt spoke, I think, last OM about the fact that all war, when we get down to it, is ethnic cleansing to some extent. That wasn't really well received, but I actually agree with him. And so, if it gets into a question of whether or not it's ethnic cleansing, you're going to get into the idea of a clean war versus a dirty war.
I disagree with you, Toby.
Let him finish.
No, I've finished, so he can speak.
Hold on. Toby. There is a super chat. I want you to answer because you are a lawyer. Yes, this one.
Okay, very quickly, I'll give my opinion on this. the traditional definition of law is to have a monopoly on force in a region, right? Because if you don't have a monopoly on the use of force, then you're in a state of civil war, or you're in a no man's land with camps of bandits doing whatever they want, right? And so there hasn't been law established. So you establish law because you're the only people that can use force. The word international implies that there are many nations. A nation is an entity that has a monopoly of force in its region. So the very word international contradicts the idea of law when we get right down to it. And so, no, there can't be international law according to the plain meaning of words. As long as you have many nations, each one claiming a monopoly of force and the right to make law in its jurisdiction, you can't have laws that are enforced by one power everywhere. And so a global one world government actually means the end of nations and the end of nationalism. I'm not going to say whether or not I think that's a good thing or possible, but no, I don't think. I think international law is nonsense on the face of it. I think it confuses what law is, and I think what they're talking about is international nice sentiments and the international will to cuddle puppies. But that's not law. Law is something that can be enforced by a power.
Well, there is a long discussion. There is a long discussion about if international law is law. I think in terms of practicability, they decided to call international law to a compendium of treaties that countries tend to sign internationally, and of course, in signing these international treaties between at least 1, 2, or 4 states. So international law is not for everybody. So each country has its own international law. Let's try to understand it more in this way. Of course, there are countries, each country that enters in the United Nations has immediately a lot of things that it has to accept and transcripts to its national law. And by transcripting the decision they signed on those international laws into national law, it becomes kind of law as well, because it's reading as well inside of the frontiers of that state. It's very complicated. But of course, international law, as I said, it was like a convenient name that people decide to call all these treaties that states making with themselves. There is, though, a problem, which is in saying international law, we tend to imagine that every country in the world is bound by all these things. Well, by the way, when Daniel was talking that the US and many countries around the world are not signatories of the International Penal Court, we are talking about the International Court of Justice. Each country that is a member of the United Nations is obliged to be a member of that court. It's by definition. And the president of the International Court of Justice is someone appointed by the United States for over 3 decades, for over 15 years almost now. So it's just very nice.
So Daniel just now Daniel disagree with Toby. So Daniel, go first.
Toby, I actually wanted to disagree with Toby. Okay, first of all, I needed to he can advise me on this because he's a lawyer. You see, my understanding of international law is that it's based on the UN Charter, and then countries treat that international law as a treaty. Like they sign it as a treaty in their local law. Like, for example, Kenya is a signatory to the UN Charter. So now the international law becomes local law. So we can't make a law that is against that treaty. That's how international law works. So it is up to the countries that are the signatories of that law to enforce it. So it is the government of the US to enforce international law in the US. It is the government of China to enforce international law in China. There's no need for the international law. Is not like the way Toby is saying a global government. It's just a treaty. We call it law just for the sake of it, but it's basically an internationally recognized treaty amongst all the countries.
Well, it's more than that. So you are talking just about a part of the international law that's pretty much equal to almost all recognized countries in the world, which is a part of the United Nations. There are all other treaties between 2, 3, 4 countries are also considered international law for that precise country. So there is many conventions that countries signed, and these they are not part of the United Nations by itself. But Toby is right. There is a problem. There is a problem with. Wait, there is a problem that is where Toby is more than right, especially in the cases where this international law is almost equal to everybody. Is that if a country doesn't respect that law for many cases of interpretation, there is this court that actually makes decisions, and these decisions are considered binding. But they are just considered binding in terms of international relations. They still are not on the text of the treaty, so no country has the right to implement it as national law. And there is a problem that these decisions can't be forced up to nobody unless the Security Council decided something in that direction.
There's a bigger question. Tim, tell us, who is the source of law?
Who's the source of law? The government who implement the laws. So
and in Switzerland, who is that?
That's the people.
Yeah, there you go, right? So this is the problem with international law. Once you have a group of judges telling countries what to do, you take away the lawmaking authority of the people, which brings you into conflict with the basis of law in the first place.
Yes,
and so this is the whole notion of the nation. The people make the law, right? Yeah. And as soon as you have a treaty, which, Daniel, you're right, there are treaties, right? But these are more like contracts, right? And so if I breach contract with you, you may have a claim for damages, but you don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to throw me in jail, right? And so this is the thing. If in order to enforce a criminal law, you need a martial relationship with the person that you're enforcing against. You can't just have a civil remedy where you ask for money. And the problem with an international court exercising a martial relationship with a domestic people is that they lose the right to make their own laws. Switzerland is an interesting example because if they join the EU, the people are basically giving up their right to make law. But yeah, Tim can talk about that.
You guys, the problem is that
Let us be partners bilaterally. May I just add something?
It's not law. It's not law. It's just a bunch of international treaties. Internationally, they decided to call it law. That's it.
So I can put an example.
There is what I'm saying is there is nothing as international law. It's just a treaty
it's
that
just
everyone signs.
So international law is just
there's no such thing. Yeah,
for example, just
the
like
the world of geopolitics.
DPA Open Mic.
Sorry.
Okay, let me explain. Simpler English. Okay, so it's just like, on DPA Open Mic, we have unspoken rules and we have spoken rules, and all these rules can be broken because this United Nations say that you can do anything you want and you can talk about anything you want. And interestingly, we always talk about geopolitics and war. Surprisingly, we didn't go into basketball and football. So this and it is this compact that we have among all the speakers. This becomes the international law between all the different people, which is like different countries. And this law can be broken the moment you have someone who just don't give a damn. We sometimes have some speakers, they come in and just talk their own shit, and then then they just disappear. It's that kind of thing. So international law is very vague because it's just a mutually agreed agreement. That's all. And which is why when you have a court, it makes no sense. It's just like me going into the lounge, the DPA Open Mic Speakers Lounge, and I create a group chat and say this is the court. And then I appoint juries to punish or to accuse one of our speakers for breaking the rules during the DPA Open Mic. It doesn't work. Who give a damn about what you guys say, man? The jury say is that you will be banned for the 3 open mics. Then he next week he still appear. There's nothing you can do about it, because I will not kick him off also, because if I do not want to enforce my authority, there's nothing any one of you can do about it. So in international law, it's the same thing. There is no enforcer. So that's why the international police, which is United States, the global police, is the only one that had the so-called real power and influence to implement international law or enforce. And which is why when I always say that multipolar world might not necessarily be what you think it is, because once you have United States relinquishing this ability to enforce and pressure all the countries into following a certain set of rules, then there's no rules. Basically, the ego cowboy, and what you might have, like what I always say, is that you might have more wars because there's no one to force them to stop, which is what we are already seeing right now in Sudan, in Yemen. You can see the Houthis going crazy.
Come on. Why?
No, I disagree.
20 years ago, there was war in Sudan.
The world is not more violent.
It's not going to stop it.
I can't hear.
It's not going to stop it. If the United States wants war, there's always going to be war. Stop defending them.
I disagree. With Wyatt completely.
Yeah, but wars will be just wars. You don't understand.
The world is nowhere near more violent than it was before. The world has been a wild west since the beginning. There is nothing that the US did. All the US did was that it was the biggest in the wild west, so it would throw its weight around, and it only did that when it favored itself. I actually argue that the world would be way more peaceful without the US throwing its weight around than more violent.
I put it in a different way. When United States is in charge, when they are the sole superpower, you know who is going to get screwed, and you know when to run away. In the future, because there's multipolar, you do not know when you will get screwed, and anyone can get screwed. Because
can we try this?
But what's the difference if you're gonna get
let's
screwed
try
by
the
US,
new way.
you're gonna get screwed by somebody
because
else.
The old one was like 50 years plus.
I explain. In the past, you just need to please the United States, and if you please them, you get peace and prosperity. If you turn against them, or you try to piss them off, then you get hell. But now, if in a multipolar world, you have to peace not just the United States, you have to appease China, you have to make friends with, or please Russia, maybe India, then maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe Iran, because it become multipolar, and Russia, India, China are all non-interference country. Their foreign policy is all about non-interference,
which is good.
Here's my argument. Please everybody, because
Here's my argument. Here's what I told you last time. Here's what I told you last time.
The commander's talking, so be quiet.
Yeah, like Daniel speak.
This is what I said last time. Here's what's going to happen. What naturally happens in all human populations. You see the so-called multipolar world you're talking about? This is actually what is happening now. You're going to have groups of countries that are seemingly weaker coming into multilateral systems. And those multilateral systems will check the countries that are in them and defend those countries against other multilateral systems.
That sounds like a lot of words to say empire.
So you're going to have teeny tiny, almost like groups of very powerful entities. You're going to have
like ECOWAS,
BRICS, all these things.
Yeah.
And then
the African Union just disintegrate today.
How? Okay, I haven't been checking it. Maybe I can check it.
I'm giving an example. Left
I'm giving an example.
About it last week.
In the future, that's what's you're going to have multilateral systems that will become almost teeny tiny USs that are going to be bound by interest.
Yeah, that's a given that each pole will militarize their sphere of influence. I mean, that's obvious. You would be stupid not to. So. Every pole's going to have a sphere of influence, and they're going to militarize their sphere. I mean, they're going to protect what's theirs.
Yeah, that's going to prevent more war.
Yeah, that's why the Macedonians are going to take over the whole Balkans. I'll tell you what.
You see, that's
going to be a Balkan Union under the rising sun of the Macedonian star.
As it used to be, man, like back in the days. I'm
sorry,
guys. I just wanted to say something if I can. International law.
No. Wait. He's talking.
International law does not apply. The international court does not have power over the sovereignty of the state. So meaning they just give a recommendation. United Nations, meaning you got to be a nation to be into United Nations. Yeah. So let's say Macedonia, we go into United Nations. You got to have a name. So your name of the country gives the nationality. So nation, Macedonian nation, Serbians, let's say Germans. So this is Germany, Germans. Yeah. In Macedonia case, we are not allowed to have a name. So my nation is not allowed to exist in the planet Earth, in the UN. You know, so there is no international law which applies equally to everybody. For one nation, it's one laws. For the other nation, are different set of laws depending who is pulling the strings. In this case, the radical left, the world communists, you know, the one Biden side, that they do all this LGBT lefty stuff that is going on in the.
That's
you
not
know, so
communism. That's not
what I'm
communism.
saying is,
Stop it. That's not communism.
Yeah, it is.
No, so
That's not
so
fucking communism.
Okay,
I'm
let him
fucking,
talk.
I'm fucking
Let him
communist.
talk.
And
more
I'm fucking
government,
disagree with
more
that bullshit.
government involvement. Check this out.
This is why
Left or right?
Macedonia is not allowed to be a country.
Yeah, more left,
You
more
messed up our
government
whole UN, bro. Come
involvement.
on, we
It's
gotta
a
kick you out now.
leftist.
So I
Yeah.
want to counter what
What? The
Daniel
UN
said,
is not even
because-
working for me, at least, man. Maybe it's working for my
Yeah.
neighbors, but not for us.
Okay.
You know, I'm
So you see, just now Daniel said that he's betting on the multi regional systems, regional blocks to sort of make the world more peaceful. The whole point of a regional bloc means that you're gonna have international law or regional law that everybody agrees to, which come back to the same point. You can't have a law without martial, without power.
It's not
military
law.
power.
It's not law.
It's not.
Okay.
Wyatt. It's not law. It's just agreed upon.
just a recommendation.
It's just a gentleman's agreement between countries, but no one can
Yeah.
enforce it
Everybody
because
So
can
once
break
you disagree,
It's
No,
not
so-
so easy. It's more complicated than
wait,
that,
wait,
but
let me-
it goes on that
Okay.
direction.
let me finish. So the thing is, you have the region. Let's say China in Southeast Asia. China is super powerful. They are overpowered, and we disagree because you say gentleman's agreement, right? So no, we disagree. What happens next?
You're
Military
fucked.
will come down and hit us and smack us to the point where we agree. That is war. That's what I'm trying to say. In the multipolar world, there will be more wars because there will be more opportunities for the bigger powers to enforce themselves and force their influence on other countries, to force them into their international law. And why I say under United States, there might be some possibility that it is a bit more peaceful, because when you want to go to war, like Iraq, when they invaded Kuwait, they need approval of a big brother that is inside the Security Council. And because Saddam Hussein did not have approval of Russia or China or anyone, so no one voted against the resolution to attack and save Kuwait. And then they get smacked by the entire world. So this when you put into a multipolar situation, it's going to be fucking chaotic. Imagine China decided that one day, for one fine day, they say that, okay, Singapore should disappear, or it should become our colony, our port, and they attack us, and United States not
They
there
can
to
do
save
that
them.
even now. Wyatt.
Okay.
They can do that even
Yes.
now, even with the US. They can still do it. Like there's nothing preventing what you're saying from happening now, even if the
there
US
will
is
be
powerful.
consequences.
But
No.
yes, I think
There will be
we are in a transition moment, and
Yes, we are
things
now in
will-
transition.
we still don't know what is going to happen. As I said, I don't think we're going to, what is almost previewing is almost the dissolution of the United Nations. I don't think we'll come to that. I think either we'll have an alternative institution coming on from a big peace treaty between the bigger ones of this planet, or we'll have reformation of the Security Council, like many countries are asking more and more for that. So I think it's very interesting what just Gosse from Macedonia just said, because one of the most, you see, a country is not just organized by a state, a government having the monopoly of the violence. It also needs to be recognized by other states. This is the very fundamental moment of all states in the world, to be recognized. And in the case of Macedonia, like many other small nations that exist but are not recognized international, or just for with a very limited recognition of sovereignty, is that Greece didn't want to accept the name Macedonia for many reasons that they are their own, and they decided to block that recognition from any other country, or to convince other countries also not to recognize Macedonia because just of their name. It was not in stage that the country shouldn't exist or be recognized. That was never in question. Although there was a time when someone wanted to do Kosovo in Macedonia for a few months. But no, the thing is that actually the problem was just the name, which is interesting how international relationships.
It's not just the name. It's the whole national identity, man. It's not just the name. They raised the Macedonian nation. With the name, I change your name. You become somebody else. I make you, let's say you're French. You're not going to be French no more. I'll call you Mexican from tomorrow. You're going to be Mexican, and we're going to change your name from Prata do Povo. We're going to change you to, let's say, Dimko or something else, you know? So that's not right. You have the first rule in international law is that you have the right to self-designate yourself, to decide who you are and call yourself. That's the first rule. You know, we do not have that right. We cannot say what we are.
Didn't work that way. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Countries need to be recognized, and they need more than 2/3, I think, of the United Nations to be recognized. So, coming back to the
let me just finish something. Let me just finish. If you want to know how the international world will work in a multilateral system, just go and look up the international law of the sea. No one can enforce it, but it works.
Yes.
Okay. So now going back to changing a bit of topic. So you guys were talking about. You guys were talking.
Greece lost the case in the Hague International Court about the name Macedonia. They lost the case. And they cannot enforce it, so that's why you know it's the same thing.
Yes, I think there will be on the final of. We have some organizations about topics. If we go to read the private chat,
I want to ask Godze one question. Godze, does your country, Macedonia or whatever Macedonia is now, do you guys have a big brother? Do you have a big brother?
Do we have big what? I'm sorry again.
Russia,
they are in NATO.
United States, China.
They are in NATO. They are in NATO.
We are in NATO.
United States. So
yes, currently the government is pro-Western, and they're puppets. We do not have our own integrity. You know, we don't have sovereignty, and we basically our government, which is puppet government.
Okay, let's move
they
on.
Changed our name.
We got it. It's also your fault. So let me finish what I'm trying.
No, we had an IL-76 shot down in Ukraine. Why don't we go back to that?
No, we don't go back to Ukraine because we talked about Ukraine. There was some organization.
No, we got the IL-76 we need to talk about. We skipped over that
going back to the global, going back to the global definitions. We are talking about multipolar world, and I was going to bring another subject very important that just happened today. So Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger decided today they are going to leave the ECOWAS or CDAO. So this is a very important thing, and this explains what exactly it is the multipolar world coming. If it wasn't in a multipolar world, okay, let me finish, okay? If it wasn't in a multipolar world, you wouldn't have these three countries deciding, and they do even something worse. By the status of the CDAO, they would have to give a year in advance of notice, and they didn't say that. They're saying they are completely leaving this ECOWAS, which is also shows the coming of a new world order in multiple world. It's still not organized. It's very problematic, but this is what's happening. They decided to leave the ECOWAS, and they could just do it in this moment that we are now. If it was a few months ago, this would have been impossible almost. So that's my argument.
Just really quickly, then we can move on. Okay, number one.
No, you can. We have moved on. You can bring another topic that is related with global evolution.
But let him speak. He will have finished if you don't need to.
Okay, then we go back to the cow.
I'm just saying the issue with the countries you're saying, it's not as big as you're saying. Like it's more like a quarrel between neighbors. Like it's not really a big thing. It will just go for a few years. They've been out of the African Union. They'll come back. There will be zero effect on the people in the country.
ECOWAS, not the African Union.
There will be no effect. I guarantee you. Like 5 years from now.
That's the point. There is no effect because we live in a multipolar world. If it was a few months ago, that would have had an effect. They decided that they are going to cross the sanctions. Why are they able to do that? To cross the sanctions?
Can I ask you, Prata, what would you do if somebody denies your existence. All of you guys. Well, how would you react
Yo,
if
I
you were
thought we
Mike
moved
with
on
somebody
from this.
denies
What the
your
fuck?
nationality
I'm
and
out.
country's
I'm
existence?
out.
And that's like a
I would start a
We
cult.
moved on from this.
Toby, best answer.
I would get my stars and stripes and hang it proudly from my flagpole.
I'll tell you what,
No,
Nanya.
it's gonna be a penalty. In Macedonia, this flag behind me, do
Born
you
with
see?
phone,
It's a
Mitch.
penalty. So imagine
No.
your American flag, you put it in front of your house, they give you a ticket.
Okay.
You're not allowed to be American
No, so-
anymore. We're gonna
You
call
know
you
what,
Mexican.
Sonia?
no,
How would
That
you
might
react?
happen
got it,
soon.
got it. No, the
You know,
problem
very soon
is
that
now.
might be the case, man.
So the problem is
Yeah,
now
it
that
sounds
you're
like it
speaking
sounds
from
like
an
it really
individual
sucks.
basis. No, so you're speaking from an individual basis. If you talk about a country basis, there is a solution. But the thing is, to reach the like country basis of division of what you can do, you need to be able to vote out your current government into another political party that can make that decision. If not, then all this talk is pointless. If as a country, yes, you can do. What you can do is get out of NATO. You get a new big brother, which is Russia, most likely because it's the closest one, and then you become the next Turkey, a tiny Turkey but a very irritating one, or you can become a Serbia, and then you will get whatever you want. You can call yourself whatever you want, and there's nothing the United States can do about it. So the thing is, to make this division, to switch the big brother from United States to Russia, you need to have the political internal political ability to change the government or change the foreign policy. And this is the difficult part. If you cannot get that, then all this anger, right, is pointless, because this discussion will go nowhere, because you guys have no agency, because your government is not speaking for the people. So that is the limitation now. So the battle is still within internal. And it is the same I always say about any other countries, like Palestine. I always say the same thing. It's the problem is internal. It's not Israel. It's internal. Because internal, they cannot get it to run the country properly. They can never fight against Israel, because Israel will always say that this is a failed state, we need to control them. It's the same thing. So Macedonia, if it's a puppet state, it's a puppet state. It's going to get controlled unless there is internal agency, to force their way to do their own thing.
Yeah,
Then
the name of China.
it.
The name of China in Chinese has nothing to do with the name that we called it, China.
Yeah.
The name China is imposed from outside, from many centuries ago, but they call themselves the Empire or the State of the Middle. That's their own name. Bharat in India, it's just in English, or from any other language, they call themselves Bharat. So many countries have very different names. They have nothing to do with what we actually call them in other language. Macedonia can keep calling themselves Macedonia written in Cyrillic, and then internationally and fortunately they have to be called North Macedonia, which is pretty much Macedonia.
Hold on. We're gonna call. You can call yourself at home anyhow you like. Outside, you're gonna have a different name. That's what you're telling me. No, man, this is the oldest name of the nationality in a country in Europe, Macedonia. You understand me? 2,000, 3,000 years old name. We did not change it so far. Why would we change it now? Because somebody else is
What is your international name? What is the international name of your country now?
Right now, they changed it to North Macedonia, in which Macedonians do not exist. But it was recognized by 140 states.
What is the name you want to call your country?
I call it Macedonia. And it was recognized by 150 states as Macedonia, Republic of Macedonia.
It changed it from
against the law
to North Macedonia. Yes. Okay, that's really
and they raised the Macedonians in it. There is no Macedonians in North Macedonia. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You have the name North Macedonia, but there is citizens of North Macedonia. There's no Macedonians in North Macedonia. That's the problem. I'm not allowed to exist on this planet as Macedonian. I'm allowed to exist as a citizen of North Macedonia.
Guys, let's move on from that.
There is no more Macedonians. We exist as 2020.
This is going nowhere. Let's move on from that. Please, let's move on from that.
No,
what do you want
to say? Someone said that Africa doesn't matter.
Wait. I want to, please. There's one. Actually, there's another thing that I wanted to respond. There's another thing actually I wanted to respond. Actually, when Toby was talking about Israel's judgment, which I cannot manage to get in because we just run off with international law. Just now Toby was talking about the difference between genocide and ethnic cleansing. They can use ethnic cleansing to get out of genocide, right? Is that what you say, Toby? Something like this, right? So the same argument, the same situation, the nuances is the same, where it might not be a genocide because it's all about, do you recognize the Hamas rule in Gaza? Are they the legitimate government? We have to decide whether they are the government of this territory. And if they are, then this territory as a state attack Israel and Israel counterattack. And then if they counterattack and you look at Hamas soldiers or fighters as they are legitimate soldiers, then they become legitimate military targets, which means that if the soldier hide underneath a building, then a bomb to hit the building will become a legitimate bombing. Then it's not a genocide. That is the problem. And you can, and if you don't recognize Hamas as the legitimate government, then
are pro United States.
No, it's not a problem.
Yes, you are.
Well, this will be our argument, the legal
Hey,
argument.
don't interrupt. Okay, how about
Yes,
that? How about that? How about
that's
people not interrupting? Is that a good idea?
Yeah,
Let's do that, please.
So that's the nuances. Because if, let's say, you don't recognize Hamas as a legitimate government, then the Palestinian people in Gaza is actually under occupation by this terror group or this militant group, and they need to be rescued. And then, of course, then you can criticize Israel as a genocide because they are bombing civilians, but then they are also trying to get rid of this evil occupier or overlord against these innocent Palestinians. So you have to so the international community also have to decide, is Hamas the real government or not the real government of Gaza? Because if they are the recognized government, and now you're going to recognize their Ministry of Health information, the numbers that they come out, then they are the legitimate government, means that when October 7th happened, when they attacked Israel, Israel had the right to counterattack. And thus the declaration of war is valid. And thus they can bomb whatever they think is a military target because they are fighting a military of a territory. So this is what I'm trying to add on to what Toby was saying, because these nuances is very weird. It really depends on where you stand. And it's not about me being pro-US or not pro-US. I'm just pro-Singapore.
Yeah.
So
if I can add on to that, it's like we've seen a lot in the modern world. A lot of people want to get online and posture as extremely moral people. And like recently in Australia, we had an SAS soldier who was taken to court and found guilty of war crimes. He was a soldier operating behind enemy lines, and he killed people that he believed to be the enemy. The war is inherently a violent enterprise. It involves killing people. And when you have a theater of war, as Wyatt is saying, like Gaza, where there's no clear authority, where there's no clear distinction between the people and the enemy, you're always going to have these same questions arise. And my point is, it really doesn't help to posture about how terrible it is. All war is terrible, right? And whenever you have war in these situations where there's no clear authority and people don't have uniforms, then it gets extra terrible because civilians die. But consider the war in Ukraine. It's like the people are really okay with all these young men dying because they're dying in uniforms and they're getting killed by shells. This is a little bit weird, right? Like, as someone who was in the army as a young man, I used to wonder about that. It's like, the world cried if some lady who owned shares in Raytheon got killed by a bomb, but they were perfectly okay with me eating a white phosphorus shell. And I used to wonder, how does that work? War is inherently violent and terrible. And I think that, Wyatt makes a good point. The situation in Gaza is incredibly ugly. And I think this is, the point I was making about the ICJ case was, I think there was a bit of showboating from South Africa. There was a bit of grandstanding. I don't think it was a genuine attempt to examine the humanitarian catastrophe because it overstated the case. It put it in really emotional terms and went straight to genocide. And I think that's actually, my point here is that's a weakness of the case. They've overstated the case. To use an analogy, they're claiming aggravated murder in a case where it's, maybe murder, maybe manslaughter. So, yeah, I'd agree with Wyatt. The whole situation in Gaza is extremely ugly because it's chaotic and because we don't have nice, neat uniforms and young people getting blown up when they're supposed to be being blown up. But anyway, we had a super chat about the the aircraft that went down. So
Yes.
Vaughn, can you talk about that, because we should actually respond to that super chat.
Oh my God, man! Let Upgrade
Well-
talk, and then we'll go to the super chat. He's been holding up his finger for about 10 minutes. Okay, let's respect the finger, please.
Okay.
Poor
Yeah.
Swiss.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what Toby and Wyatt said. I totally agree with what they said, especially with the word genocide. Everybody's throwing around this word like it's please or hello or thank you. It's not a term you can just use for any conflict. If you see the casualty numbers, even if it's horrible on his face, many wars had much worse numbers than that, or even famines or stuff like that, and nobody called it the genocide. There's a ongoing war with Saudi and Yemen. There's hundreds of thousands of people died. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody called it a genocide. So I think we should just pump the brake about this word genocide. It's a war. It's horrible. People dying. But we should also remind ourselves what really genocide means. I mean, the Jews have a legitimate point to be a little bit scared about when people come and just kill them in their houses. I mean, it doesn't mean that you need wait. It doesn't mean wait. I let you speak. I didn't interrupt anybody.
Don't interrupt us. Don't just stop fucking interrupting, guys. Please.
I'm very sorry. You know, I didn't interrupt anybody. I was kind. I just want to say that doesn't mean that you need to respond. It didn't matter that how they did, but to call everything a genocide when somebody is dying, I mean, come on, guys. Let's be real. If it wouldn't be like televised like that and things would be like that with the social media, nobody would give a damn about this. You know, there would be like a normal day there in the Middle East where people die. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's actually the truth, you know. And like Toby said, there's this big pushing over for genocide, you know, like especially South Africans, right? If they would have it done it differently, maybe people would be like, sounds like more like it is what it is, right? Instead of a genocide. Yeah, that's it.
Can I answer this very quick?
know,
Can I answer this very quick, because I'm also putting my thing on the air again, very quick, so that we can move on as well. So the problem is that South Africa overused the thing of genocide because they were out of measures, and this is the point. I know actually the accusation is intents of genocidal intent is not really genocide, and it is true. It is really a big mistake of our society, modern society, to overuse concepts, to take them out of place and use them ever and ever again. But we have to look at the different situation. The Security Council didn't act, didn't do anything. They have been silent, so most of the US have been blocking everything, and South Africa was left with little, finding it repulsive what they were watching, and many people around the world were finding it repulsive. They had no other weapon to use, and that was what they could use. The Convention of Genocide was the easy weapon to use in that moment, and they had a good case with the genocidal intents, because they were pronounced by heads of state, and when heads of state speak, this is almost like law. It is really a strong statement, and they used it, and I think they did some good towards the Gazans. And there are signs that the Israelis are starting to be more careful. And like Toby also said, there are signs that the judicial system in Israel will take care of some people using extremely bad wording that is incitement to violence. And we saw that as well, not just in Gaza, but also the colonists in other parts of the West Bank. And so I understand you guys saying, okay, South Africa overuse. Yes and no, because you see, they were out. Everybody was against what was happening. They were out of weapons to use. The Security Council just didn't work. And we have to recognize this again. The Security Council didn't work.
Yeah, I just wanna say one thing. You guys are full of shit. Remember when Vladimir Putin went to Ukraine? All the fucking news were like, oh, these people, they are Christian like us, blue eyes, blonde hair. The same thing It's not even the same. It's 10 times worse what Israel is doing to Palestinians. It's 10 times worse that Vladimir Putin did in Ukraine. And now everyone is saying, I don't give a fuck if it's genocide or not. That's a fucking war crime.
Okay. So my favorite war crime is whenever there's a super chat and then nobody responds to it. It's really makes me feel bad. And so I'm going to ask Wyatt to please go ahead and put up that super chat. And we're going to go ahead and cover the whole situation with the IL-76. I'm shocked that we didn't talk about it during the time that was allotted to Ukraine. Let's go ahead and cover this topic, and then we're going to move on to another topic after that, guys. So just go around. If anybody wants to say something about this, we'll just go around a couple times. Take it away.